Today's drawing and painting tutorial is on how to create this whimsical style owl sitting on top of this cute little jack-o'-lantern. I'm going to show you some tips on how you could draw the owl and jack-o'-lantern, and then I'm going to be showing you how I applied the watercolor and added the whimsical line work at the end to bring my painting all to life. Now, if you would like to have some help drawing, and I know not everyone likes to draw, and you would like to have a tracer for this, you can easily go over to my Ko-fi page. There's a link down inside of the description. You can go ahead and click that. It'll take you right to my sketchbook membership, and that's where you're going to be able to find all of the line drawings for the drawing and painting tutorials. It's easy to join, very reasonably priced, and I appreciate all those who join to support my channel. Let's go ahead and I'll start out with giving you some tips on how you can draw it if you would like. Let's start with some tips on how to draw this cute little owl and this pumpkin. Now I have quite a few videos on my channel already on how to draw pumpkins, so I'm going to mostly be focusing on my little owl. So when you're laying out your picture, you want to take a look at how big you want to make it, and then look at how much room you might have. I'm working on a 6x6 piece of paper, so I have my pumpkin taking up about half of my space. I wanted kind of a larger pumpkin and a little bit of a squattier shaped owl. So when I'm doing my pumpkin, I'm going to want to do this beach ball type of shape here is what I want to do, and then I want to look to see where the center of my pumpkin is, and I'm just going to draw a line straight up. This is going to help me decide where I want to put my owl. For my owl, I have a hat, so I need to leave some room for that, and then his little body. Now his head is a lot larger than his body, so I'm going to be looking at perhaps starting right about here. This would give me enough room to be able to put my hat somewhat and still give me room for a body. So I'm going to be starting with my face being kind of a squishy little circle, a little bit, maybe a little bit flatter here, a little bit off to the side, more like a rounded rectangle, maybe, if you think of it that way. And what you want to do is just look to see where your center line is, and then check to see if both sides are kind of rather even. It doesn't have to be critical, but that's what I look for when I'm drawing my little guy. Now to do the body, I'm going to be starting, like this would be his shoulders, so I would be looking off to the side, then checking to see, am I kind of similar on each side? That'll just help me square it up a little bit, and then I can come off to the side here, coming around, making a similar shape to what I did with my head, but a little bit longer for my body, and then coming across. So this would be a little bit of a smile face shape is what I'm looking for there. Now at this time, I want to take a look and see, are my sides similar in shape? And mine, I think mine are fairly similar in shape. Now to do the little wings, I would start off to the side here and make a little tick mark on each side, and then double check, are they kind of similar in size of how far where you place them. Then I would swoop off to going this direction for my one wing, and then I would start the other direction. Then you want to take a check here to see, are you similar in the distance here? And then that will help you decide which lines you're going to keep. Often I have more than one line that I can look at, and then I can decide which one I want. That looks pretty good. I'm going to start up here off to the side of his cheeks, a little ways off past his body, and I'm going to be doing 3 little loops, this one being the biggest one, and then getting a little smaller and then coming to a point. So like 1, 2, 3, and then doing the same thing on this side, and then clearing it off. Once I have that area, then we would go ahead and erase what's inside of our wing, and we have our wings drawn. Now we can go ahead and place our hat on. Now if this hat has got a little bit of a twist in it, I'm going to be starting here a little lower on this side of my head. I'm going to be going up just a tiny bit, so I'm going to be coming at a slight angle. I'm going to put a tick mark here too, so I know where I'm going. So I'm going to come out just a little ways, coming around. Now I want this to go across my forehead, across here, and then I'm going to be coming up, scooping up just a little bit, and then coming back down. Now that's just going to give a nice little curve to my hat. So it's going to look like it's going around, coming across the forehead. Now if you notice, there is a little line here, an extra one, where we see that hat dip down just a little bit. So I can come up, come here, and then touch off to the side, And that's just going to give that rolled edge and make it look like my hat is going all the way around. Now to do this part of the hat, sometimes I like to go ahead and just create my line first of how I want my hat to curve, and then I can build off of that line. So I can start here, I can curve around it. So this is like the center line of my hat, and then I can come this direction here. It's going to be shorter, it's going to curve in faster, and I'm going to be following that line. And then up. So my hat is partly off. Now, if you have a room to do your hat all the way, you would just follow your line around, and there you would have your hat. And then you would erase this line in the middle, and you have built your hat. Cute, right? And then you add whatever you would like to add at the bottom to add. You could add a spider, a star, whatever makes you happy with your owl. I do need to make sure my hat is coming a little lower here, because if I get it too high, it's not going to be sitting on his head. So I need to change that angle just a little bit to make that look right. So I want it to look like it's sitting down on his head and is scooping around. So I'm going to change this angle too. Just a little bit. Now to make this hat band, it's always to make it look like it's going around. It's a smile face shape. Smile face, smiles face, and then you can decorate it any way you would like. Now to do the eyes, they're just big round circles. I always suggest doing a sketch motion with your hand when you're trying to create circles. Go light and then work on creating your circles. Circles are often a little bit tricky to get circle-ish shape right away. That just helps me draw my shape a little better. I was looking for big eyes, and then the little beak is just an upside down triangle in the middle. I did give him a little bit of fur there. He does have a little bit, a sporting bow tie to make him look fancy, and all he has for feet, if you look at it as being upside down W's, is what, well, not upside W's, but W's, like here, right, for his feet, and then coming back in, and he's just standing on the little pumpkin. And that's all there is to doing your little owl. To do your pumpkin face, it's just simply, you're going to be starting in the middle. Here, you're going to start with that sad face shape, come out just a little bit, and then you're going to be bringing your shape in, like so. That's going to be creating that shape. In the middle is where we're going to be doing the nose. Noses can be created a whole bunch of different ways, but for my jack-o'-lantern, I gave it kind of a cut-off triangle shape. So the top is cut off, not as much of a point, and then down. And then you're going to be starting your side ribs. You're going to just basically follow the shape of what you drawn for your beach ball shape. Come around off to the sides and then up. What will give it an interesting look is if you do curve it up slightly here, so there's those little divots. Whatever you make on one side, you would create on the other. And there we go. I'm just basically following my circle. My shapes are getting a little narrower as I come out, and that'll just help it make it look like the pumpkins going around. Now to create this little cute little smile, the one thing you'll need to keep in mind is that you're going to be circling one way. When you come down, you're going to drop, come up, come down, and then you're going to be circling back the opposite way. So it's a simple way to do a smile, and it looks pretty cute. Well, those are some tips on just how you might like to create this. Now, if you would like to join my membership where you could get a pattern to get the tracer, which a tracer looks like this, and then you can use a light box or put it up on your window and go ahead and trace it right onto your watercolor paper and be ready to draw. And there's a clickable link inside of my description box for my Ko-fi membership. You can go ahead and check it out there. It's very reasonably priced and easy to join. Let's work our way right into the watercolor steps now. I'm going to be making my pumpkin black, and even though it's black, and my hat black, I'm more than likely going to be doing a couple layers of color. I'm going to be starting out with this black. All blacks are slightly different. They may be green, more blue. Black is made with a combination of colors, so depending on what your black is made of will depend on what it's going to look like. I'm going to be starting on dry paper and then putting my wet paint in there. And even though it is black, it's still going to need a couple layers because watercolor paint always dries slightly lighter. So I'm going to be starting out, it will be most likely a charcoal color when I finish, and I will be adding another, glazing over another layer of my black when it dries. This is basically kind of a color book style. I'm following in the areas that I want to have my black in, and I'm going to be letting it dry, and then afterwards I'll do another glazing layer. Watercolor always travels where the paper is wet. So for my pumpkin, I'm going to be starting and doing every other rib. So I will do one, I will let that area dry, skip one, and then come over and then do them across my pumpkin. So I'm going to speed this part of the video up. As you watch, you'll see me do and repeat the same process of layering my black color on a dry paper. Once your areas have somewhat dried, you could come in and do your next ribs. By doing it this way, you're going to have divisions of your colors and they won't all just blend together. So give a little bit of time for your areas to dry and then go ahead and paint your next layers. And then you will actually have more of a pumpkin rib area, more defined than doing them all at the same time. Now, because I want to do these colors in my face, a different color besides the black, I want to make sure I'm painting around them. So I'm going to be doing more like negative shape painting. So I'm going to be going around these shapes and then trying to keep my black out of there. Watercolor only wants to flow where the paper is wet. So as long as I keep those areas dry, my watercolor will stay right in those areas and not float into the areas that I need to keep white in order to change them a different color. Again, I'm going to be going around my little bow because I'm going to be making that a bright orange, and I don't really want a lot of this goldenish color inside of there because it's not quite a bright enough color for my orange. So I want to make sure I'm going around that area. Now, I don't want to do this area right here unless my color is nice and dry on my hat, so my black isn't going to kind of follow down in there. If it's not all the way dry, there's a chance that my black could follow down into my gold, and I really didn't want that look. So I'm painting around my eyes, even around my beak, because I'm going to be wanting that kind of a brightish orange, and I'm going to try to keep that yellow ochre color kind of in its little separation box. Now, once I have that color, I can also pick up a little bit more of the same colors that I want to darken with. Use a little less water, give this a tap, and I can come in now and then tap my paper where I think I might want it to be darker. So underneath, close to the wings, and here would be a great idea to have a little bit of a shadow. So I'm using the tip of my brush and then laying in a darker bit of color. And because that color is still wet, when I'm tapping it, it's going to kind of blend out into that area. So use less water, so it's going to be more concentrated. But because it is a little wet, that pigment's going to be flowing out into those areas. Let's work a little bit more on this pumpkin. Some of my ribs have dried enough. I'm going to be glazing underneath another layer of the black, so I'm going to be watering it down fairly good, giving it a tap before I put it on my pumpkin, and then I'm going to go ahead and lay in another color of the black. Now, you don't have to color in all of that first color. If you'd like to use that as some of the highlights, you could leave that showing to add a little bit of highlight to your jack-o'-lantern if you'd like to have some of that charcoal. If not, you would go ahead and just layer over your colors and proceed that way. Let's make a little bit more of a red brown, a little bit more of a reddish brown, so maybe a little bit of my reddish brown in a little bit of dark brown. Mix your own colors. Sometimes the browns you have in your set might not work exactly how you want it to. This is probably fairly dry, and even if I get some of that color into my gold, I'll be okay with that because those colors are gonna all go together and look fine, even if some of that color does seep in there. The same thing with this. I'm going to take a stronger concentration of my color and just have that on my brush with not as much water on it. And I'm going to come in and give it a tap before I touch. And then I'm going to be using the tip of my brush and tapping in a little bit more color where I would like to have a little bit of shadow. And because that paper is wet underneath, it should do that blending of the color all on its own without me not doing a lot of work. Let's go back to the black and add those next layers on those ribs that I skipped last time. Let's add a little bit more color on there. I'm thinking I'm going to concentrate mostly on this one to add my next layer of color. A little bit of poppy orange color here too. Give this a tap because I don't want too much water in there. And then let's lay that in this area. Now to do my greens, I'm going to just pick kind of an earthy green color that I might have. And then to make it even more earthy green, you could pick up a red brown and add it to your greens to even make it look a little bit more earthy color if you need to kind of deepen or give it kind of more of fall color. So I like that look of adding a little bit of reddish brown to my color. The red and the green are complementary colors, so they're going to neutralize each other. And I'm going to be adding, where I drew, I'm going to be adding some of that color in there. But I can also come in and I can just create a little leaf space as well and just add in some color. So I'm just taking my brush and dabbing it and not necessarily making leaf shapes, but just filling in around my jack-o'-lantern. And then I can add some of that darker color in. I can come back into my reddish browns and my rust colors that I had used up before and just add some of that color in there as well. And not necessarily adding individual leaf shapes, but just tapping in some of that color to fill in my space. So I don't have to necessarily paint a background in that area, and I won't have so much white in that area either. So I'm adding my colors in that way. Let's work a little bit more on some of these accent pieces up high here. So I'm going to be taking a little bit more brighter orange and adding that to my nose. My picture has, my pumpkin has had pretty good time to dry, and adding in a bright color orange here. I'm going to be using some of that orange up here as well and glazing in another layer. And you could be doing individual squares now too. If you wanted to add that color in individually, you could add it to the individual squares. I'm going to be adding it a little bit here and there and then kind of filling in as I go. I'm going to be adding some of this color to my bow. I definitely want it to be darker on the insides because that would be in shadow. And then you can kind of choose how much you wanted to do on the front. I'm going to be adding some pen and ink work in there, so I'm going to be adding some details there. Let's add a little bit to his feet and adding a little bit of color that way. Let's pick up a little bit of rusty color. Maybe tone down a little bit on this hat, and this is maybe where I'll come in and add individual shapes. So I'll come in and add to every other square, just changing it up and adding, strengthening my pattern with my color now. Okay, let's decide what to do with my eyes. I'm thinking I'm going to use kind of a lightish gray color, not a lot of color. I do want my eyes to look fairly light. I'm going to use kind of a Van Dyke, this one's called Burnt Brown, and I'm going to be adding that to the outside of my eyes. And this will dry lighter, like always with the watercolor, it's going to be drying lighter. I am going to leave a few little white spots in there though for my bright white in there. So I'm going to be laying this color in, but I'm going to be leaving a little bit of bright white. Now my black is kind of reactivating on my side, but I'm going to use that to my advantage and have that be kind of my shadow line. So it's kind of like when I tickle that edge of my color, it's coming out and it's blending. I'm hoping you can see that on camera, but it is kind of reactivating my black, but I'm going to use that as a shadow line and just use that instead of trying to fight it. Okay, so let's leave that that way. Let's let that dry a little bit, and then I'll come back and put the color in there. I'm going to choose one side to give a stronger shadow on my nose. I'm going to just choose like my left side as my shadow line, and I'm going to leave that other side a little lighter. Now for my eyes, I'm going to do similar to what I just did around these eyes. I'm going to use that same color, that darker umberish color brown, water it down fairly much, and I'm going to come in and do the whites of his eyes that color. So I'm not going to leave them bright white, but I'm going to be adding a little bit darker color around there. I'm going to give that a chance to dry before I do the center parts that will be more colorful, but we're going to add that on there. Now to do the center button areas of this guy's eyes, I'm going to pick up some of these same colors that I used on my leaves, and I'm going to be adding that to the little button areas. And again, I'm going to choose kind of having a darker side. I'm going to add a little bit more color on this left side of each of my eye, just to give it a little bit more contrast and a little highlight on each eye. Now let's work a little bit on the big part of the eyes. Now on the big part of the eyes, you can see there's a blue part and then there's a black part. I'm going to be starting with my blue, and I'm going to really be controlling the water. I'm just going to be choosing a bright blue. I'm going to be down in this area of my color, and I'm going to be choosing a bright shade of blue, loading my brush up, and then making sure I don't have too much water. So that means I'm going to give my brush a tap. And then I'm going to be coming down into the bottom of my eye and tapping in my color, keeping it in that darker, the big part of my circle, and I'm tapping it in the color, making sure that there's kind of a puddle at the top of my eye area there. So that's going to have a little bit more of the color there. Let's come in and do this one. And then once we get that color done, we're going to be coming in with a darker color before this dries and tapping that in. So I'm doing my bright blue. Hopefully you can kind of see that it does have a little bit more water in there. Okay, and then I'm going to be choosing this bright or darker Payne's gray color. It's a little bit more dark. You could actually use black too if you wanted to, but it's kind of a grayish black. And now I'm going to go ahead and start at the top of my eye here, and I'm going to be tapping that color down into my bright blue. Now, if you do have a line there where your colors aren't blending, rinse your brush out, go in and take just some clean water, give it a tap, and then you can add just a little bit of water to that area and see if that will help your colors blend. All papers dry a little slightly different, so you might need a little extra help. You don't want to get too carried away with it with too much water, but hopefully you can see how those colors are blending. Now I'm going to give that a time to dry before I were to do anything else with those eyes. For my background, I'm going to be doing kind of a night sky, so I'm using that same Payne's gray color to do my night sky. My background is dry, and I'm going to go ahead and just start on one area, move my brush back and forth. I'm going to scoot close to the areas that I have done, but I don't want to spend a lot of time there. This paint is pretty fresh. Watercolor can be moved and lifted up, so I don't want to spend too much time there. And I'm going to scoot into my areas, change the direction of my brush here and there to give it more of an irregular background, and just scoot around and do that area. I normally like to start in one area and then move my way across to my paper. Now, as you do your paper, and if you decide you want it to be a little darker, you can go ahead and just add some more color in. So loosen your color up and then glaze over another color of your darkness, because that blue is going to dry dark or lighter. I'm not wanting too much of it into my yellow areas, so I want to be a little careful of how I'm putting it on. But you can kind of see how I have a little bit of an outline, but not a lot of an outline. And when I go in to add my pen work, that's going to help strengthen those areas as well. Okay, well, this one's still wet. I'm going to go ahead and pick up a little bit of metallic color. So I have my metallic watercolors, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of color. And I'm going to be adding that on to my picture. Now, I don't want a lot of it on my jack-o'-lantern, so I'm going to cover up my owl and my jack-o'-lantern. Let's see. Let's cover up a little bit of that. Let's cover up a little bit of his face so I don't get too much in there. So I have kind of a really watered down, washy color. And I'm going to take my other brush and I'm just going to tap that on there. That's going to add a little bit of metallic, fun quality to my background, but I don't want a lot of it on my jack-o'-lantern or on my little face. Cute. Oh, I love it. Now you could also come in with a little bit of your metallic paint, a little bit thicker this time, so it's a little bit thick. Go ahead again, tap this off. And you could come in and strengthen some of these areas too, so you could add a little bit of that metallic quality to these as well. I did get a little sloppy with my blue on next to my moon, so I did kind of lose some of those shapes a little bit. But I think in the end, I'll be able to go around it with some pen and ink and strengthen those areas. Maybe I'll even take a little bit of this metallic. Let's just pop in a little bit of it in this area too. Just brush some of that in, just to carry that color. Today I'm going to be using the micron pens. They're my favorite ones to use for as far as being permanent, and I'm going to be using this rust color and this black color in a 05 and a 01. For the white, I'm going to be using my Uniball Signo pen, which is a great white ink. If you don't have one of those, it's a great one to add to your white ink. And then I have this set of gel pens that I believe I purchased at Walmart. It's a great little glitter set. It's a fun little set to have to add some detail to your work. Now for my work, I like to do more of a sketchy line quality, meaning that I'm not looking to actually follow exactly my line work. So when I start, I'm doing broken lines, and then sometimes it's called continuous line work, where you put your pen down and then you just let it flow and you don't pick it up and just kind of keep on doing irregular lines. So what I'm going to do for you is, for watching me do this, I'm going to just kind of speed the camera up. As you watch, you'll be able to watch me put some of these line work on. But this is a fun way for me to create. I really do enjoy adding this extra bit of creative line work to all of my paintings, and I do enjoy doing this style of line work. So I'm going to be starting with some of that rusty color, then using my black pen. This is a different size. The nib is a 01. It's always nice to have different line widths in your line work that you're doing. It's just another way to add interest, is if you change up the pen or the nib. Because it is a nib pen, it would all be the same. If when you press down, it's not going to change the width of your line. So, but to get a difference is to change up the nib. So that's why you would like to use a couple different nib widths when you're doing this. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking now and let you watch. I want to add the white to my eyes, so these will be the highlights. Once you add the highlights, everything comes to life. So if you add the 2 highlights on the outside, you're going to add the 2 highlights on the inside of the opposite eye. So that's where I'm going to be adding the highlights. Come in with a little bit more white. You would like to add some bright pops of white. And then when I did my smile, I kind of messed it up a little bit. I did do my twirls the wrong way, but I'm just gonna go with it, and that's how it is. I couldn't see my lines when I was doing it. So actually this one should be going the opposite way, but I think it'll be fine. Well, that's how I put this little cute owl together, and I'm hoping that you'll give him a try as well. If you would like to share yours, you can always go over on my Facebook page, Painting Crafty, and share it over there. I love to share other people's artwork because it doesn't have to look like mine to be good. We have all kinds of ideas of how to make these, and I love sharing your ideas, and I think you inspire other people to try, so I appreciate you sharing your work over there. Well, thanks so much for joining me on today's painting and drawing tutorial, and hopefully you'll come back and join me again, and next time you'll create right along with me.